It's lively and unrehearsed. We call it Moral Side of the News, and we're glad you're alongside. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children. With me, as always, is a distinguished panel: Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School; Reverend David Harkleroad, South Point Church, New Albany; and Father Joe Graffis from the Archdiocese of Louisville. Welcome, panel. Our first topic this week: the U.S. Surgeon General sounded the alarm on the effects of social media on kids. Dr. Vivek Murthy said, quote, "We're in the middle of a youth mental health crisis, and that social media presents, quote, profound risk of harm for kids." Panel, is the alarm too late? And how can parents begin to rein in what's already out there?
I guess I'm going into old fogey land. Rein in. I think that parents need to have responsibility for what their kids are doing. I'm not saying censor or anything like that, but I'm saying they should know where their children are, literally, figuratively, and electronically.
I would agree with you, Stan. I don't know about the old fogey part. I think it's probably a little bit late because this has been around for years. And I worry, like all things, there's many good things about social media. It's amazing what apps we can have, and we can get instant news. We can get history. We can get podcast. I mean, it's incredible what we didn't have 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. And that's a blessing. But on the other hand, there is all kinds of very difficult things. I worry about pornography is all over the social media, and how does that affect so many kids, where thank God we didn't have that kind of stuff when I was growing up. I mean, I don't know how that reacts to them, but I think the biggest part for kids is they get on it, and kids say things just like adults say things sometimes that can be very hurtful and cruel. And when you're in that vulnerable age where looks and popularity and all that kind of stuff, especially for girls, it's just devastating. And so I think the parents need to be doing a lot of talking with their kids about what are you looking at, what are you not looking at, warning them. And parents need to be looking at themselves just to try to figure that out, but also talking about how adults do that. So like everything, it's a blessing and a curse. And how to, I mean, I think the companies themselves need to do a lot better job than sometimes they've done. But that's too long a sermon. So David, take it away.
I agree with both of you, friends. I think it's obvious that this is an issue. We don't need professionals to tell us it helps. They're doing research, but it's evident if you look at what's going on in our culture. Social media is taking over, and it's not just the kids that are struggling, it's adults. We could even go into what we've seen with elections in the past years. I mean, social media is here. It's creating all kinds of issues. It's got positive and negative effects, and we definitely have to be thinking through those. Again, especially as parents, especially teachers, how are we letting kids interact with these things? Because they're very powerful. And one of the articles I read, I really liked, just highlighted not only a need to monitor and limit social media, but to replace that with actual real social interactions. I read a book a while back by one of the regulars with Christianity Today, Andy Couch, I believe, or Crouch. And I can't remember the title of the book, but basically their family every night shuts off everything for dinner, even the lights. They light candles for dinner. They shut off basically all modern convenience and eat together. And it's something they look forward to as a family. So all that's just to say, I think it certainly needs to be monitored by adults. It certainly needs to be taken very seriously. And I think, again, we need to keep moving kids toward human interactions, because there's just less and less of that.
I would agree with that a whole lot. And I think, it used to be, well, 10, 15, 40 years ago, too much television. and there's still some of that. I mean, I never can quite understand why people have the television on while they're eating dinner. That again seems to eliminate social communication. And I just think talking with each other, whether it's as a family, whether it's with groups. I mean, Zoom has been a great thing in many ways. We're on it. On the other hand, we miss a lot of interaction because of Zoom. And I just find, I guess, being an old fogey, there you go. I like silence a lot more. A lot of times I just turn the television off at night. And then, David, you were saying reading books, right? I remember something about that. I read them all the time, but I find so many people, even some of our younger clergy, do not read any books. They, only go to social media for all their news or even the history of the church or whatever it might be. And I said, you're never going to get the full story there. You've got to read, history, or you got to read biographies, or you got to read novels or whatever. And then, obviously that has to be cautioned too sometimes, but the human interaction we're missing. And I think sometimes even in our congregations.
One of the reasons I think is because if you deal with these social media websites, you're online and there it is, instantaneous gratification. Joe, reading a book? My goodness gracious, that could take you hours and hours. And if you get to a website or a comment or a tweet, you've got that down in less than a minute. It may be absolutely wrong and totally detrimental, but nevertheless, it becomes part of your worldview. And that's the problem. I hold these companies liable. Why would they construct a platform that would make it easy and accessible for children to cyberbully one another to the point that some of these children take their own lives? It's nonsensical, but more than that, it seems to be me to be evil and criminal.
Stan, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think we have a situation where, the companies have gotten bigger than their founders, bigger than their boards. I think we've created something that's living in a sense. And I don't know that anybody, they're writing algorithms, they're writing powerful algorithms. I think, something has been released into our world that's beyond any CEO's ability to now tame when it comes to, again, politics and children's lives and something that's in our world. And we're going to have to figure out how to live with it. So that's not to negate anything you're saying, Stan. I just think, I don't know if any one entity can control this anymore. I would also, just as I'm thinking about this, encourage any of our listeners, if you've never done a media fast or a social media fast or even a technology fast, it is just healthy for your soul. And I would just encourage you to consider that. It could be a day, it could be a week. And one thing you might realize is how addicted or dependent you've become on some of these things. So we'll just encourage you, maybe parents, even to have your kids take a break at the beginning of the summer for a few days or a week and see what that looks like in your family or in your life.
Yeah, and I that's a great idea, David. And I've heard that, and I think we all need to fast from a lot of things sometimes. I think the bullying thing, having been a pastor of several churches with schools, and one of the common complaints I would get from parents, Father, you got to do something about the bullying in the schools. And, I would talk to the teachers and they said, we don't see a lot of it going on in school time, but as soon as they get home and all night long, they're on social media, and we can't control that. We can control what happens in school, but what happens after school and before school, who is in charge of that? And we tried to say that to parents sometimes, and they'd be horrified that we were saying bad things about parents. And they would, no, we can control what we can control, but you have to take control too.
Well, Father Joe, I'll just follow up on that real quickly. Even adults say things online they wouldn't say in person. We see this regularly. And I think, again, just to the moral side of the news, whether we're in person or online, we need to love our neighbor as we would want to be treated. Love our neighbor as ourselves, treat your neighbor as you would want to be treated. People just aren't doing basic things that they should do, and they're being even worse citizens online than in person.
David, the point that you just made, I think about a lot. And to tell you the truth, it is totally befuddling to me why people will say outrageous things online, because once you say it, you can't take it back. It's there. It doesn't go away. It's in the cloud. It follows you forever. And why people would, when I write it, even when I write an innocent email, I weigh every word, because I know who I'm sending it to, but I have no idea where it's going. And how much the more so something like the here and now. We're speaking, people see our image, and this is something that bears tremendous responsibility for us and for everyone in our shoes.
We're about to wrap up this topic, I'm sure, and it's not for our topic today, but the artificial intelligence question, I also think is the next thing. When you can imitate people's voices and all that kind of stuff, that is very, very scary. And if the kids, and they'll be on top of this before all of us will be on top of it. I mean, you could mimic somebody else's, some other kid in the class's voice, and oh my God, I mean, that scares the daylights out of me for a lot of reasons across the board, but that's a topic for another day.
It's frightening, but I also think it's got to be felonious somewhere.
All right, panel, we're about 13 minutes into our program this week of Moral Side of the News, and we're going to move on to a couple of more topics. Our second topic, the survey is in, and the list of qualities Louisville residents want in selecting a new police chief are no surprise. They include experience in fighting crime, maintaining a quality police department, and a track record of transparency and openness. So turning to our panel, how do you weigh in?
Well, I'm very glad that they've asked the community to respond to it. It's been a little slow. I think we've still got a long way to go. I know that through the Metro Council and through some of the work that I've been involved in with Clout, we've had a truth and transformation process of trying to get the police to have listening sessions in the communities that they serve and trying to bridge some of that gap. But I do think, we've got great police officers, but they're part of a culture sometimes, and sometimes, and they got way too many things to do, and we need to help them with mental health things. But a new chief has got to challenge sometimes his officers as well as encourage his officers, or she, whoever that might be. Because there's been some bad things that have happened, and you can't blame all of it on training, and you can't blame it all on. Sometimes it's just a culture. We're all products of our culture, but we constantly need to have training. And I think if police knew the people of their areas better on a personal relationship, that community policing that we talked about years ago, there would be great improvement. Police living in the areas that they serve, all those kind of questions would be helpful to a new chief.
I'll speak pretty candidly on this today. I think Louisville is at a crossroads as a city. I think this decision is going to be bigger than people might realize. Louisville's been soft on crime. I have watched Louisville transform in a negative sense over the past 15 years, maybe since I went to grad school. I lived in Louisville. And again, I hate to speak harshly, but I've just seen Louisville go downhill. Things are less safe in a lot of areas. Things are not getting nicer. And a lot of it has to do with, I think, identity politics that have been pretty soft on crime. There are transparency issues. And so there's this tough tension. This survey, I think, if I'm understanding it correctly, revealed two things. First, that Peel wanted someone that would actually deal with crime. I have firsthand accounts of Louisvillians saying the police won't even show up to take a report. So you have, this leniency on crime that is problematic, and the citizens are not happy about it. But you've also had past transparency issues and humanitarian issues, and those are hard to hold in tension. Someone's going to have to come in and hold that tension, because I personally think if Louisville continues to be soft on crime, the city's going to face a lot of problems down the road here.
Of course, gun violence is part of that, and that's just increased like crazy. And we can debate that for another issue, which we don't want to deal with today necessarily. I think you said the dilemmas, the polar. Police have to do their job, but sometimes we ask police to do too many jobs that they're not trained for. Sometimes in mental health situations, and sometimes not even understanding the culture in which they're dealing with. And that could be Hispanic, that could be many other cultures there. So they have many more challenges. And how do we give them healthy tools to do what they've got to do? And of course, we have less police than we've had because so many have left the police departments. That means they can't respond to so many calls. So it's not always the police's fault for some of that stuff, but it's going to be a tough position, and God bless the person who gets picked for that. Stan.
Joe, you started to bring up a topic that I think is key in the selection of our new police chief, and that is the overall burgeoning diversity in the Louisville community. And it's my hope that the people who are involved in the process reflect what Louisville Metro is, as far as different groups, each with similar needs. Ending crime is a given. We've got to do that. But there are different needs, and when we get past that, there are different needs and different reflections in an array of communities, and people need to be aware of it. The person who sits in the chief's chair, he or she has to be someone who can serve all those different communities.
No, I just agree. I think it's a tough balance. We want law enforcement that is compassionate and tough on crime. And I think, Stan, you said that we have to eliminate crime as a given. Maybe on this panel, but I don't think in our community. We aren't far from cries that we're saying defund the police, and so I think the tough on crime thing does have to happen, but it has to happen with compassion for the people of our city, and that's tough.
A decision is forthcoming. We'll
defunding the police. That just doesn't make sense.
Right. Go ahead, John.
Okay, panel. In just 1 week, let's move on. We'll celebrate the 70th annual WHAS Crusade for Children on June 3rd and 4th. The crusade raises money to fund more than 200 agencies, schools, and hospitals to help make life better for children with special needs. Panel, I'll turn to you. Let's hear your thoughts and maybe some personal stories on 70 years now for the crusade helping children.
I've been around the longest, so I guess I got to say that. But I think all three of us are part of the hearing panels for the grants, and I think all three of us would say whenever we, some people say you meet with every agency for 15 minutes. Why do you do that? Why don't you just read the stuff and make a decision? And I said, there's something about the personal relationship with people. And sometimes they explain what they're doing in ways that we've not even thought about. And that's been very helpful over the years and lots of different areas, from the complicated equipment of hospitals, which, not being a doctor, I don't always understand, but some of the doctors explain it like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic. We could do that. I think the one thing that's touched me in recent years, we've made a big effort to look at southeastern Kentucky, particularly Appalachia, as well as southern Kentucky. And one of the things that's really struck me is, of course, the great needs of that area, and they do not have the resources that we have in Louisville. But I think also I've just been enamored by some of the ways they raise money for the crusade. Some of these little counties that are very poor counties, well, we did this and we did this and we did this, and we raised $5,000 or $7,000, and that's a lot of money for some of those very poor counties. and that's part of the reason we want to spread out all across the state of Kentucky. And, we go all the way to Terre Haute, Indianapolis, Evansville in southern Indiana. So it's a vast area, but there's a lot of incredible agencies, the not so famous agencies, that kind of probably warm my heart the most when I hear what they're doing and how they're doing it.
It's those mom and pop groups. A bunch of neighbors get together and they decide that, gee, we have special needs kids in our community, but there's no place for them to play ball. So they get together and they decide they're going to, in their community, in their neighborhood, they're going to put together a site that is friendly to every type of ability or disability. And that's, that's heartwarming, because we can change not only the lives of those children, but those people who are behind the project are in the process of changing the lives and the outlook of their entire community. I wish the world functioned on the level of humanity that the WHAS Crusade for Children has exemplified for 70 years.
Yeah, Stan, it's so encouraging to see what's going on with the Crusade, to see all the organizations out there. You talked about a community getting together and building an all-access playground. Growing up, I don't think I'd ever seen a piece of playground equipment for a child with special needs. Now it's on virtually every playground, and it's because of groups and committees and people coming together trying to make this happen and reaching out for grant aid from the Crusade. And I have loved, it's just been a joy being a part of that grant committee, hearing the projects, the amount of groups trying to better the world around them for these kids. One of the projects that just caught my heart this year was one of our applicants was getting sports equipment for kids with special needs to participate in intramural sports. And I just thought it's intangible. It doesn't necessarily link immediately to grades or immediately to some sort of life success measure, but it's one of those intangible things in life to participate. And, from small things to big things, it's just so exciting to see what's going on with the Crusade. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for all of us, as all the three of us, I think we got $12 million worth of requests this year, or ask. And of course, over the last years, we're a little over 5 million. We're really shooting for at least 6 million, maybe more. this year because that would only meet half the needs we get asked. I really wish we were up to $10 million, and someday we've got to do that. We're trying to think of different ways of doing that, but the need is much greater. For example, autism. Stan and I probably more than David, but I can remember 20 years ago when they were saying autism was 1 in 150 kids. Now they're saying it's like 1 in 60 have some aspects of autism. Wow. Now we're diagnosing it better, but we've learned the problem. How do we fix the problem? How do we ameliorate the problem? We do it as a crusade, some amazing stuff, and these groups do some amazing stuff.
Okay, panel, a quick story from me. My daughter just turned 25, and at 4 days old, she was rushed back to the Children's Hospital, put in an incubator. I was not involved with the organization at that point in time. And on the side of the incubator, it said, provided with funds by the WHAS Crusade for Children. So I think everybody has a story of some sort, knows someone who they go to school with, go to church with, religious activities, whatever it might be in your neighborhood. Everybody has a crusade story. And I want to ask you we have about a minute and a half left. What would you say to people to encourage them to give for the 70th year?
He who saves a life saves a world.
I just think we've come out of a lot of difficult times, and we still have some difficult economic times, but these special needs kids really need us even more than ever. So if you've got a few extra dollars, an extra $100 or something like that, the more we can give to the crusade, the more all children and their families are helped.
Yeah, well said. A lot of people giving a little bit can change the world. And as Stan was saying, giving even just a bit, you can change a life and have a lasting impact. It's great.
Great way to wrap up our moral side of the news. A week from now, starting at 1 o'clock on Saturday, June 3rd, the 70th annual WHAS Crusade for Children begins and continues all weekend long till 7 o'clock on Sunday night. We'll watch that final tote board, and Father Joe will see what that number is. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Moral Side of the News. Thanks to Rabbi Stan Miles, Reverend David Harkleroad, and Father Joe Graffis. We won't be back next week. Enjoy the crusade. We'll see you after that. Thank you, panel. The 70th annual WHAS Crusade for Children is coming up June 3rd and 4th. And there's something new and special. For just $70, make a contribution, and you get a raffle ticket to a kitchen full of GE appliances: microwave, refrigerator, stove, and dishwasher. Second place, a washer dryer. Third place, an ice maker. $70 per ticket. Only 1,000 tickets will be sold. Find out more at WHAScrusade.org. That's WHAScrusade.org.